Hi, friends. Host Eric here, bringing you the newest true words available. Your old true words, toss them in the trash. Toss them in la basura. Why? Because the newest of all the true words are here now. Clear the showroom of last year's models of truth. It's all new truth from now on. It's shinier. It still has that new truth smell. And it's got airbags for people who might be riding on top of the car or in the trunk. It's got that many airbags. You can never have too many airbags in a car. That's one of the newest of the true words that I wanted to say, actually, is it's simply not possible to have too many airbags. I'm going to one day invent a car that's nothing but airbags and thereby solve safety problems forever. I can call my car dealership nothing but airbags. Now, it's true. My car made nothing but airbags is not very effective at transporting you anywhere. But to the extent that you attempt to transport yourself in it, you will do so safely. Very, very safely. Because after all, the car's nothing but airbags. So, Adrian B., I'm out here working on safety on our nation's highways and byways. Why? Because I care. That's why I'm introducing my new brand, Nothing But Airbags, to the car market. Airbags and seat belts mostly, and bubble wrap. I can have them produced in Mexico for $340. Sell them $30,000. It's a luxury car. You know it's a luxury car because it's safe. Luxury cars are always safe. That's part of what's luxuriant about them. Hi, Zandy. You know, you're in California. You should drive down here or take a train or something, maybe from Fresno, to come to one or more of our activities when the people are here, later in June. So anyway, besides that, I'm doing all sorts of things tonight, Zandy. I'm talking about all the newest true words. I'm tired of the old ones. Most people are. Truths have a short shelf life. Yours have all expired. So it's time for all new truths. From now on, Zandy, you cannot get enough squirrels. You love squirrels. You love the shit out of them. You want to farm squirrels and begin a squirrel sausage factory. Those are the truest words I've ever spoken to you now. They didn't used to be, but now they are. They're new truths. Who else would like some new truths? Peter Dentis? You are going to be a parks and recreation supervisor for LA County. It's a cushy job. Pretty much you drive around in a little cart and check to make sure the other Parks and Rec people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is also driving around in carts. And you've always been passionate about parks, but you've always been kind of ambivalent about recreation. So you're in Aptos. Oh, that's above Santa Cruz. It's happening June. Basically, the meat of the time will be June 18th through the 23rd or so. About 5 days of festivities. I used to go to Santa Cruz in college. I went there. UC Santa Cruz, where I majored in smoking weed. Hello, Blue Nowhere. Have you heard the good news? I'm saying all new true words tonight. No old ones. No words that are old prior to today's live stream. So no truths, that are old. Which new truths would you like to hear things about? You want to hear truths about cranberries? Oh yeah. I've gotten my master's many times over, and all licenses all the time. My licensing business has afforded me both masters and PhDs in various things. There's not real masters and PhDs, but I'm licensed in having a master's or licensed in having a PhD by all licenses all the time. I can pick whatever subject I want. So if you're not familiar with my brilliant business model, brilliant business plan for all licenses all the time, basically to license people for things they don't need to be licensed for. You could be a licensed glove wearer. Means you wear gloves better than other people. If other people want advice about wearing gloves, they should go to a licensed glove wearer, obviously. Maybe you want to be a licensed suave guy. You could bust that license out at a bar and be like, hey, lady, look. What do you mean you're not impressed with my picking up on you? I am a licensed suave guy. So go ahead and question your own conclusions here. I mean, do you think all licenses all the time would give out this license to anybody? And the answer is no. But it wouldn't be called suave guy. It would have to be a more official sounding thing. It would be like licensed social engagement practitioner and consultant. Licensed social engagement practitioner and consultant. You tell me I got bad social skills? I'm licensed at this. I'm a licensed social engagement and what was the other thing I said? Yeah, whatever. Yeah, let's hit this bong. I agree. It's gone cold for too long before I sat down here for this live stream. We got two different kinds of weed today at the weed store, and the lady did not label my weeds. Imagine. I don't remember the name of one of them. This is the nameless one that I don't remember. Oh, yes, they do. Licenses from all licenses all the time do, Peter Dentist. Do you know, why is it that I can metaphysically prescribe metaphorical medications to people? It's because I'm a licensed metaphysician. You can't do that. You're just a licensed metadentist. And that's not as good. You can only pull people's metaphysical teeth out. Nobody wants that because they all grow in straight. And the teeth are just metaphysical. They're not subject to decay. The buff. You saying I'm buff, Adrian? You admire my muscles? A lot of chicks do. A lot of chicks come up to me and they're like, Rick Benson, can I ask you a question? How do you get so cut? I'm just like, bro, it's all natural. The only thing I lift is very tired ladies up off the floor to put them to bed after we're done, you know. That's where I get these biceps from, you know. Anyway, mixing all the weeds is a good idea. My concern, actually, I don't know if you guys are aware of this. This isn't really a new truth, but since I, Rick Benson, have taken over, it doesn't really matter. It's buffing. What's it buffing, Adrian B? Is it buffing your ass because it needs to be shined? That's what it sounds like. It sounds like you're saying that. You begging me to get over there and buff your ass and shine you up? The video. You want me to make a video of it too, huh? You dirty girl. You're talking to the right Rick Benson, let me tell you. That's my gig, all right? I'm in the surfboard industry. Anywho, I'm going to pull this bong rip in. Hopefully, you know, the CS Joseph effect doesn't take over and make me ENTP again, you know. Oh, really? Is that right, Adrian? Well, I guess you're going to send me some pictures. Oh, I'm sorry, Adrian. That was awful. I'm not normally so into sexually harassing people like that, but I hadn't smoked my marijuana, so I wasn't accessing my extroverted intuition. If I smoke weed again, the first time I switch to ENTP, but the second time I smoke weed, I switch to ISFJ. Huh. Let's see. Okay, let me try. Oh, I'm so worried about the cats. I have to get up at 9 tomorrow because I have to work at 10 and I have to clean a little bit first. Ooh, I want to buy this bench. I know it's ridiculously enormous, but let's get it. It's only $40 for this whole big ass thing that we don't need. Okay. Eric, that question isn't a TE question. Mad Biscuit 23, did you get the answer right? Thing is, you can't just assign a value. Did you attempt to assign a value? What did you conclude? Okay, so I thought of one simple way to do it, which would be kind of cheating a bit, but it's just this, the first person automatically says -1. The second person automatically says +1. And for both those people, if they have an X, they're going to say their number in the form of a question. -1? But if they have a Y, they're going to say their answer, their number, in the form of a statement. -1 or +1. And so, no, I didn't read your solution. You probably left it after I started this live stream or as I was starting it or something, because I responded to your comment and then I started this live stream. Yeah, you got to have the first two cancel out, but you also have to have the canceling out be informative to the third person about whether or not either of them have a Y. Okay, well, I mean, I went through the comments there, put my own comments in response to them, and then started this thing. So if you replied to my reply, then I didn't see it yet. C.S. Joseph says, I'm an ESTP, then if I smoke weed, you will become an INFJ, which is the subconscious. So what does that mean, that I become an INFJ? It's so crazy. It's like, has he never smoked weed before? It doesn't change your personality. It may make you express it somewhat differently if you're not accustomed to it. But it certainly doesn't change your personality. Neither does alcohol. It may make you more gregarious, but you're still the same person. Everybody knows this. It's insane to think that how in the world would smoking weed cause one to become a different type? To suddenly start using different attentional manners. Doesn't make any sense at all. He's so nuts. Like he just doesn't understand what he's talking about at all. No. That person was correct. He gave the same answer I did, which is if the first person says why, then it's irrelevant. The second and third person know their job is to get it to -1. If the first person says X, okay, well, he may have not explicitly stated a detail that I inferred from his answer. That's possible. But it's incorrect to say he's wrong. You know, it just means he gave an incomplete answer. I've never seen C.S. Joseph make songs or tell us random stories and pass my test. Well, if your test is for an HP, then you're correct. It's a good test, and he doesn't pass it. You're right. I don't think weed changes too much, and dosing matters for all things. Well, I don't even think really anything changes you that much. I mean, obviously, if you're on acid or something like that, or PCP or whatever, you're going to be pretty wacky. But that's going to be true for everybody, and that wackiness is going to be beyond type or typology. Now, on the other hand, most drugs are not that strong. Well, I agree they alter your mental state, but that doesn't mean they change your manners of attention. That's a different claim, right? So you might say, for example, let's say that you pour some horrible, like, half-assed gasoline into your engine, part of it, like half tank of 91 and half tank of like 83 octane, and obviously the car's operating less well because it's got this weird gas in it, but it's still good enough to run. Okay, now you wouldn't say that this change of state that you're witnessing is because the change of gasoline has caused the engine to go from a V4 to a V8, for example, or to go from a regular engine to a rotary engine, for example. You wouldn't ever even conceive of that possibility. And the analogy here is appropriate. So it's silly to think that drugs would change your attentional manner or the kind of machine you are, they just cause the machine to operate differently, obviously. You can't change what kind of being you are. So he doesn't mean anything then. So he can give a general notion out there that presumably is a claim, but doesn't have to substantiate it with anything. Because after all, he refuses to be specific about what he means. That's just being dishonest. So, I mean, that's not a saving grace. That's full and complete damnation at that point. He's making claims with the intent purpose of avoiding having them scrutinized. Ridiculous, unacceptable, immoral. You're the product of your homeostasis, the balance of all the chemicals, and you can alter it where you act completely different. Well, sure, you can alter a car so that it won't run at all by putting sugar into the gas tank. Knocks it out, like just lying on the floor unconscious, just like you can with drugs. Right? So the point is, attentional manners are ways of paying attention that become embedded such that they are your ontological expression. They are who you are. And nobody ever stops being who they are. They may express that self differently, but if we're paying attention to the processes, we'll successfully and correctly note that those are in fact different displays correlating with the same processes. Bring in the thunder, Amber Thrasher. Very nice to see you, Amber. Of course. Let me tell you what you'll be tonight by transubstantiation. We're going to give you a try of each of these two, and you let me know what you think is the better of the two. All right, Mad Biscuit. I'll concede the point. You win that part. You win that argument. Okay. You're right. If it was incomplete, then it's incomplete. And by approving that answer, I have some of that blood on my hands as well, don't I, Matt Biscuit? It's fair to say that. I am guilty of killing 3 prisoners because of my own hubris. All right, Amber Drescher. This bong rip here is of the Godfather OG, which is not labeled, but this is the best weed they had in place, they think. This other one is one that was formerly on the top shelf and went down the shelf, but it isn't necessarily, because it's a little more dried, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's less stony, you know? So we'll see what you think. Okay. First one, Godfather OG. Amber, this one's for you here. I'm trying to that JD. You missed the first quarter of that bonger episode before I transubstantiated it. Sorry about that. I forgot. I'm a bit of a stoner. So let me give you a shot here on the. You're not ENTJ, right? Let's not get caught on that. Why? Why shouldn't I get caught up too much on the terms? Isn't that what distinguishes a meaningful explanation from one that is just arbitrary and metaphorical? That's what I think. I think that with my brains. Okay, I was watching an interview with Benjamin and Dave Superis. Can you elaborate on the computer simulation thing you were talking about? Well, sure. I'm saying that we want to have a model that's simplified in terms of it's just agents, sort of generic objects, and statuses that can afford those objects sort of points in a way that, so it's like all right, well, I guess one of the first things to do to explain it, I'm going to put a link here to something, is there's a playing card game that I made that's kind of made up. It just uses regular playing cards, but you got to have a bunch of decks of them. But anyway, and it's designed to be a, I guess, competitive or cooperative card game that represents cognitive functions. So like in its ideal incarnation, you'd play with 16 people, but you could play with 8 or 4 as well. You could do, if you were going to do 8, you'd probably have to play it with, I guess you could do any 2. Anyway, it doesn't have exactly all of the details worked out, but it's called Function Rummy, and it explains sort of the mechanics of a system. So, in other words, you want a system in which an agent that is functioning under the rules you produce within the system will behave in distinct ways that are sustainable in some sense, and with relatively predictable approaches to things within the scope of the way that problems can be, or things can be accomplished within the system, right? So that when you set the sim loose, you end up with something that looks kind of like a very primitive version of life, and it's in the way that these agents naturally end up taking their particular instances and creating kinds of behavior that are reflective of the rule differentiations within them in such a way that it's informative about, you can look compared against the world and see. You know, it's kind of hard to explain, but look, here's the link to this thing. Look at the link to this first of all. You can't. It's almost impossible for me to explain without getting into so much detail that it's challenging to talk about. But if you look at this, you'll see some idea of how it would look as like a card game, right? So this is obviously a much simpler system than you'd want for a real simulation, but it's a kind of simulation, so to speak, that simulates the mechanics of people interacting in the world with various functions, basically. So, in fact, the card game is a really good example of how people need to understand card functions as a model in some sense, which is a card game. It has certain statuses, which is like the value of a card, certain actions. You can play a card or burn a card or different things you can do, you know. It's got certain kinds of knowledge. You can't see your opponent's hands, but you can see your own hand. It's got a certain amount of FE. You can bluff, right? It's got TE in the sense that you could try to approach it with a system of some sort. It's got TI in that you can calculate the probabilities. It's got, and the thing is, we already know what it's like to create an artificial intelligence that executes according to the rules of that thing. What I'm proposing is a model that instead is like The Sims, right? But the individual people in the simulation, it would be a smaller simulation. You would need to have wouldn't need to have that many, like, I guess you'd say NPCs or whatever. But the simulation would be all NPCs. It wouldn't be anybody playing it. But the idea would be that you set these agents loose according to the rules of the self rather than of the system, and make the construction of self be the system and measure it accordingly. And that's basically what I'm talking about. The first two functions make up roughly 90% of one's personality. Is that true? Well, no, that's not true, but it's a good question. I would say that it might be the case that they make up roughly 90% of your conscious attention, your conscious willful attention. But there's a lot of personality that is unconscious. So, for example, there are no jumpers. That's nonsense. There's a lot of people who would easily enough agree that 90% of one's attention is through the dominant function and the second slot function, more or less. The thing is, like whoever said, a lot of functions are unconscious, but there's also an interplay between the first four functions that's ongoing and continual. And in other words, they don't just express, when you're talking about percentages, it's misunderstanding that each of them has a different and critical role. So it's like saying the gas pedal has 90% to do with making a car go fast. Well, not really. I mean, from your experience, maybe, but not literally. So it's like your dominant function comprises an implicit frame, and the implicit value by which everything else is determined, whether it's an adequate enough field for you to play on at all. And the secondary function has a value that's instrumental. It serves attaining points in your third function, which is an absolute value. Your fourth function is also an absolute value, but it's one you want to delegate to somebody else. And it's one that you you grow to understand the value of slowly, because to attend to it directly with your attention on that means to more or less not attend to your dominant function. Now, those are your really conscious things going on. Okay. So I can consciously turn on my third function. That is to say, I could do it right now. You know what? Razir Trimo, did I get your name right? I hope I got your name right. You have the best question. It was just, oh my God, you must be some kind of genius, because I absolutely love that question. Some people come in here and they don't ask good questions like that, but that one really got me thinking. Great job. All right, I could do that shit if I wanted to. Hi, Chris. What's my opinion on jumpers? There's no such thing as jumpers. That's silly. So TI users are advantaged in online poker. How unfair and unethical. I don't think TI users are necessarily advantaged at all. I'm a TI user, and the thing about poker is, even in online poker, you have to understand successfully how people respond to pressure and be willing to apply it in order to accomplish the goal you're trying to accomplish. And that's not always easy for me. I tend to be too risk averse. I tend to play too conservatively and try to make sure I've got the best hand before I'm gonna push. What am I looking for? Water. I do have a little bit of water here. Okay. So what does FI absolute value third slot look like? What is their absolute value? So let me finish answering this other question here a little bit. The other thing is, Razir Trimo, on the back slot, the shit's doing its job without my conscious attention and without my willful attention. It's still intentional. It's serving my own intended outcomes. It's self-interested in some sense, but it's not. It happens automatically. So in order for me to do all this NE stuff, I have to check on, in order for me to do the NE kind of stuff that I do anyway, I have to check things against NI and TI concurrently. So what I just did there in that example was, first I settled upon what the truth was that I was going to express. And I even stuttered for a second and then delivered it. And then I said something else and I TI checked for consistency and I qualified myself and said, well, this, So that quality of using NI is unconscious. I can't exactly explain what it is. I'm not actively aware of it, and I'll ignore it in general when it's applying to my own life. But when I'm communicating, I don't ignore it at all. I need it to be communicatively effective. I need it to attain my third slot absolute value of FE. And NI also comprises a sort of absolute value, but it's an absolute value that I use to judge the external world. Things that don't resonate as true, or people who don't resonate as having a sufficient value for the truth, I will consider illegitimate. Six slot function is demonstrative. You demonstrate it, but you're not really, again, consciously aware of that you're doing it. It's something that you tend to find laborious. Or if asked like, well, how do you do that? You just say, well, I don't know. I don't even know what you're talking about. It's just sort of like you're unaware of what it is you're doing. Somebody said, well, how do you know how to teach this English thing? Well, like this grammar thing I taught tonight for these kids, because it's off debate season, but the parents don't want me to work with them. And the grammar thing says, it's sentence diagramming. So if they would ask me, how do I know how to do that? I don't know how to teach it. I'd say experience. And there's a plan that I basically follow. And but if you were asked, well, how do you know how to do it? How do you know how to do it? I'd say, well, experience, or I learned some things from this guy or whatever. The reality is I TE'd it, but I couldn't begin to describe to you what that means, really. So the intentional manner of figuring out how best to do things, or how better to do things, how more efficiently to do things, and what's going to produce best results, in large part was driven by FE. So I wanted to be perceived as super competent and effective. And so I became super confident and effective. And, you know, it's like, really, left to my own devices, if I wasn't worried about that at all, I'd probably just screw around and do whatever, you know. I mean, once you're a coach, though, of course, you got to try to win, because I don't want to be embarrassed by losing. And so that's a powerful motivator. But the TE is hard to explain. That's demonstrative. I'd probably demonstrate a lot of how to. I have a lot of know-how, but it's not something I do consciously. And in the seventh slot, obviously FI is not conscious, really. It just sort of happens. And obviously I'm aware of it when it's happening, but it's not an intentional manner that I can willfully use. I think that's the better word to use, is willful versus intentional. So conscious functions are willful and intentional. Unconscious functions are non-willful and intentional. Now on to FI absolute value. What is their absolute value? Well, their absolute value is to love, to spend the time enjoying and finding precious the shit that they find important and precious, and to make decisions in life based on that approach, I guess, and putting themselves in other people's shoes to make determinations about what's good or right or wrong or whatever. That would also be something. And I don't know. I don't even know. FI third slot, it's like they feel satisfied by FI shit. I don't know. This question has always confused me. FI shit always confuses me. I think you may use your second more towards your third, seemingly, because it is so wrapped around your first function. No, I mean, look, your first and second functions are going to be either an action and a deliberation function, or an interface and a knowledge function. They're two different styles of interacting with the world. One style says, I'm going to think myself about what I presume to be a static system, make decisions, and go in knowing what I'm going to do to some extent. And this is characterized by the way I approach YouTube. Even though it seems like a lot of shit I say is off the cuff, on the fly, or whatever, and that's absolutely the case for most of my humor. Almost all my humor is off the cuff, on the fly stuff. It's not thought out about it ahead of time at all. But shit about cognitive functions, I think about it a lot of time before I actually introduce it into a video or into my talking about shit. So it took me a long time to talk about each element of the this mustache is scratching my nose, itching my nose. It took me a long time to introduce each of the different things that I'd already thought about a lot before I brought them out to play, so to speak. And the reason is because language is a fairly static system, and because of my experience with argumentation and stuff, I can go, all right, well, these are all the possible arguments against, these are all the possible ways it could be wrong. Okay, I think it's safe. I can't figure out how to beat it. So more accurately, I can't figure out an attack or a negation that I can't counter. So, I might as well bring it out. But that's thinking about shit a lot of time before you bring it out to play. That's TI, NE, action, deliberation. And it works okay because the system, it really is relatively static in terms of the possible arguments people can make. It's unlikely it's unlikely somebody's going to surprise me completely with something, model killing or whatever. So, okay. So what are they going to say next? I was going to finish that thought, which was, oh, right. The other side of the equation is the knowledge interface types. They want to know all the static elements of a dynamic system first, so they can more effectively interface with the dynamism of the system. And there's two different kinds of dynamic systems. One is social and one is solvency based or goal FITE shit, the interface types have a different approach. Know the static elements, but approach it as a dynamic system and interface with it. I don't know what I'm going to say because it depends on what he's going to say. Yeah, that's true of me, but I do know what I'm going to say if he says X or if he says Y or if he says Z. It might be true that I can't tell you what I'm going to say now because it depends on what he's going to say, but it doesn't mean I haven't figured out all the potentialities. I figured out probably all the potentialities, or at least more potentialities than the other guy, which is all that matters. Of course, NI can always drop a bomb. The one potentiality I didn't think of that's somehow determinate. But when you start linking roots in to other things, other bits of justification and empirics and such, then it becomes pretty solid. I'm confident I can win the argument against anybody, and I've yet to encounter anybody who's even been willing to meaningfully debate me about it. Okay. Computers can win at poker. They have recently, but it's usually at heads up. They win at heads up. At a big table against pros, they'll typically lose, but they're getting better. So they may beat us at poker pretty soon. Do you agree with Eric's explanation of the third slot FI? He's always sticking to one point. Do you mean that sarcastically? But Jordan collapses everything into singular meanings. Peterson is definitely NI something. Probably he's an ENTJ. That's not from his TI. He's not an ENTP. You gotta be kidding me. I heard you said one of the main aspects of FI is putting yourself in other people's shoes, which is correct. FI is actually not that emotional, believe it or not. Aspects of it are, but others aren't. Eric is actually pretty emotional, especially over TI stuff, ironically, but he's FI polar, and when he's most emotional, he usually explains lack of FI. Well, in that sense, you're right, of course, Mad Biscuit, that FI is not simply the attentional manner as an experience, but a meta-awareness of it that I'm completely blind to. So as I describe it and as I talk about it, I tend to leave out that aspect of it. There's a meta-awareness to FI as there is to probably every function as it gets higher up in the stack. And it's most fully realized in the dominant, where you know how to use it as a hammer and you know not how to use it as a hammer too. Whereas when the tool function, you know how to use it as a hammer like nobody's business, or more like a sword or whatever. But that meta awareness is minimally realized in the polar, and as a consequence, I do a fairly poor job of explaining it. I have a fairly incomplete job, let's say. How does TI keep you honest? Well, TI necessarily makes me honest because I'm always concerned about the defensibility of statements. I'm not always honest. I don't never tell a lie or anything, but I tend to qualify my language so much with it. It's not just the TI, it's the NETI. It allows me to anticipate ways in which the thing I might say might be used against me. And as a consequence, I qualify shit a lot and I choose my language very carefully. So in that regard, I'm honest. At least it's difficult to prove me dishonest. Now, actual honesty, that really probably comes from something else. It might not even come from FI. I think it probably does. By which I mean, there's a fairness above TI fairness. I can be TI fair and still be unfair, which is to say I can use definitional things to avoid consequences and stuff, and to slant things, take advantage of my own TI strengths and compel everybody into TI frames and stuff. And that's a kind of unfairness as well. So I think that the real honesty of choosing to express that through goodwill is almost a quality that links directly toward links directly to I guess growth optimization or something like that. And what's the major disagreement between Kant and Hume? I don't know. Who had the bigger dick? They use it as an end to a means. It isn't the ends as itself. What isn't? You need to understand that whether or not I'm using FI, quote unquote, is say attending through it, is going to mean a couple of different possible things, right? So the point is, if that attention is successful or realized, as I understand that, whatever that means, then I'll find that particularly satisfying. Now, note, let's look at FE in contrast. I don't find especially satisfying the processes of FE. In other words, I don't want to spend my time playing FE guy and just, let's exchange compliments, and going, just praising people or whatever. But I do enjoy the actual or honest attainments of other people's express goodwill and positive regard. And it's probably because with being an FI polar person, I have less of an inherent sense of my own worth than a lot of other types do, or value or something. Or an understanding what that means exactly, even. I think FI in the second slide is very emotional, but still very manipulative. Possibly. I've never heard ESFPs being touted as the best politicians. Who wants to join my TE Polar Anonymous group? I just need a TE DOM tool to make a schedule and a plan. All right. Would you agree that FITE applies its standards to itself and FETI applies its standards to everyone? Well, you remember that FITE is solvency of dynamic non-human systems, or non-FE systems. In other words, systems where humans are treated like cogs are fine for TE, like protocols of a company and stuff, right? But systems that allow for human discretion and flexibility more or less suited to TE and more suited to FE. So the thing to remember at TE and FE is that TE is solvency based for the individual. FE is solvency based for the individual too, in a way, but it's a different strategy. And the key difference between FI and TI then is because FE needs to get the cooperation of other people and agreement of other people in general. TI checks to make sure things are communicably defensible or argumentationally defensible. Whereas FI checks to make sure things are consistent with what you want and knows what you want. And TE pursues getting it, checking back against the metric of, is this what I want? Not, is this defensible? So because FITE is never communicative, to the extent that it is, it's still always serving to solve some specific problem for some specific reason. Then it's not focused on defensibility, it's focused on solvency, which means it doesn't have to make sense, it just has to work. FE makes me sick to my stomach, but through cognitive functions, I understand its utility. Yeah, it should make you sick to your stomach. I mean, come on. It's it's not it's not fake. This is the thing. Just because you can fake it, I mean, I could fake FI too, probably not very effectively, but the thing is, there's in FE users, there's an understanding that other people's experience in ontology are dependent in somewhat upon what other people tell them and say to them. And so it's important to remember that words can be powerful, and we want to speak in general good words to people. You don't want to speak, you don't want to tell people what's wrong with them generally. Because to the extent that they're behaving badly, that behavior is probably an expression of some aspect of themselves that they've failed to protect in the past. They've experienced some sort of trauma, or otherwise, assault upon their ontology that limits their expression of self in ways that are not in their own interests, but that are attempting to that are serving the interests of the person, but are not, that are trying to serve the interests of the person, or that are well intentioned but are causing ultimately contraindicative outcomes. So I think the thing there is people, I don't know. I lost my train of thought now. I forgot what I was responding to. Let me go down here. Difference between ignoring FE and polar FE. Well, ignoring FE is okay. You could debate me about cognitive functions, Nicholas Major. Email me, will you, and we'll set up a time. Or you can look at my calendar, find a slot. My next available slot is probably Tuesday, either early morning my time or in the evening my time. What time zone are you? Have you done any research into my understanding of it? Watched any videos or anything? Do people might resist doing activities related to their fifth function, like for an INTJ doing any activities they do it, they might not enjoy it, like exploring random connections about things? Well, no, I would say that's generally not the case. But, like, for example, INFJs and ENTPs hang out together and get along great. And the reason is because the activity that we're doing there, chatting with each other about abstract concepts usually, is particularly conducive to two metaphysical types. The two metaphysical types appreciating the quality that the other brings in their dominant. So, as an NE dom, I like NI, and I feel comfortable in things that require NI, provided there's the opportunity to do NE as well. I mean, because my NI is serving my NE. As I'm extrovertedly intuiting right now, like I said, the knowledge aspect of me with 4 and 5 is checking things primarily against truth, NI in the fifth, and TI soundness in the second slot. My SI thing is providing me the information that I already know because I've said this shit a million times now, and that's primarily what the SI does. My SI doesn't function as a predictor in the way that Kimberly's does. Kimberly looks to the past to make decisions about what things are gonna mean, or what's gonna happen. Whereas I don't do that. So, I mean, very rarely. If I have enough experience with something, experience certainly will inform my NI. But when I'm talking about abstract concepts here, when I'm talking about my own life at all, when I'm just talking about shit in the abstract, then it's mostly NI that I use to know against. And that's going to be done unconsciously. I don't I can't exactly explain why I know that something, why I choose to not say something than say something. Other than it NIs. FE isn't fake. I just seen it as unnecessary. Give value through giving fake compliments. Politeness, is that FE? No, compliments are not necessarily fake. In fact, if it's good FE, they're not. It's taking the time to state out loud something that you've noted that's worth mentioning is complimentary versus taking the time to point out something critical or something that's solvency driven or something that's related to you, right? So, I mean, one of the reasons why I like this format so much is because I'm not habitually giving that kind of FE out. I'm only wanting to be I want to be the FE dumpster. I don't want to be the FE dumpy, right? Although I do put out plenty of FE too. I mean, I'm not using that. It's just it's much less in my wheelhouse than receiving FE. So this is a nice FE situation for me because, hey, look, here I am sitting here talking. Everybody's paying attention to me. Isn't that wonderful? It's like very FE gratifying. I'm not giving out much FE. I'm just getting FE juice, right? So that's kind of third slot function. But the other thing is the FE juice I'm getting is doesn't necessarily come from you complimenting me or anything directly, right? It comes from the reality that you're here engaging with me, taking me seriously, and affording me credibility and legitimacy in the process. That as an FE user, especially, how seriously I take myself is going to link somewhat to how seriously other people take me. As a TI user, how seriously I take myself is going to link somewhat to how communicably defensible I think things are. So that gives me the chance to, and then NE is going to see possibilities and such. I'm going to be ignoring the NI that says, Eric, you're not going to be able to convince anybody of this shit or because I don't have a plan in the first place because I'm countervaluing TE. So it's a complex web. It's a tapestry. Fake politeness is 6 slot FE, which is just the worst kind of FE. In ESFPs, anyway. I think ENFPs are a little more subtle with it. FE is the reason no one knows about how Ben Franklin was a child rapist and murderer. Was he? It's quite an accusation to throw out there, Mad Biscuit. How do function axes play out in unconscious functions? For example, you say eighth function is effective for people, but has eighth function's associated axis play into it? Well, I mean, if you have SE in the eighth, then you've got NI in the fifth. So the thing is, by ignoring issues of timing, in other words, the whole notion of making it a single determinate act that is determined by the nature of understanding the nature of the dynamic system you're looking at and then acting on that thing, you're ignoring the timing aspect of things, pretending you have infinite amount of time because you're NETIing. And when you act on things, it's only to allow you to come up with more ideas. It's not really to allow you to do anything else. So that's why it's an unconscious tool function that's sub-instrumental. That is, say, it serves the dominant, which serves the third. So 8th slot is something that you kind of get because it's the same kind of function as your dominant. So you're an action type, they're an action type. For me, like ESTPs, I kind of get them because I'm an action type, they're an action type. INFJs and ISFJs, they kind of get each other because they're both knowing types. And they both have access to using that 8th slot function when it serves the dominant. That's why I upload so many videos. Well, I've got these ideas and I can't really extrovertly intuit them outward and have them be established in the world and for my SI in some sort of permanent sense, and thus enable me to get FE about them unless I do the thing about, push the button and type in the shit and push the things and upload it and publish it and all those little legworky things. That's all SE. Because I already know how to do it. I've done it a million times, right? So there's no TE figuring it out. It's just SE following through on all the different steps. Just do. Don't get distracted midway. Don't half-ass it. Do all the little things. You know what I'm talking? So that's how does the axis play? Well, I mean, because I'm ignoring NI, it's the SE isn't serving NI's purpose, it's serving NE's purpose. Okay, INFPs can be hard to type. I agree. I think they're the hardest type to type because they can display different things. And they're very much defined by their experiences, which means they're differentiated. And FI too is very specific and individualistic, so they can differentiate in different ways like that too. FI is easy to spot when you have FE. It's hard. It can be hard for me. It's easy to spot ISFPs, I think. TI is accuracy. NE is what if. I agree TE is what is and putting value to books and experts. Yeah, TI is I think better called defensibility than accuracy. Although accuracy is sort of implicit in defensibility for sure. But I would NE is what if's pretty good. T is how to, sort of what is. Melandrix, long time no see. Oh my God, Melandrix, have you been blind for all this time? And today you finally had that operation? I am so glad to hear you can finally see. When I tell ISFPs they are wrong, they listen usually, but INFPs do not listen at all. So annoying. I mean, I find it the opposite way, but then that's because I'm conflicted with ISFPs and INFPs, you know. But the difference is, I always feel with INFPs that I'm scrambling to meet their standard. And with ISFPs, I feel like I'm trying to not to beat them up because I'm pissed at them at this point. They're disagreeing with me, you know. Why are INFPs famous on social anxiety? Is there any way to use the information to manage it? Well, yeah, sure, there is. And the reason is because they're fourth slot FE. ISTPs also have a lot of social anxiety, although you wouldn't guess from your experience with them, but they've got something like it where they've got FE anxiety. I wouldn't call it social anxiety, but INTPs in general have more FE anxiety because of the SI third slot, which is their hidden agenda, which means they really want to have memories where they don't fuck up FE shit. And if they do, that embarrassment will haunt them. They'll replay it in their head. They'll use their NE to think about different possible ways it could have gone, even though it's already done. And then their SC is polar, so doing shit, getting out there and doing shit is not their strong suit anyway. So it's gonna snowball, kind of, It's gonna be like doing a snowball of cocaine. Let's have a big cocaine snowball fight. Who wants to play cocaine snowballs with me? In a hermetically sealed room, so the air just gets filled with cocaine. As for playing around with it, that'd be a fun activity, huh? I learned from FE embarrassments to just think about hurting that person physically, or just to understand how much higher of a level I am than that person. But because FE can only accomplish so much. Well, this is what I think about FE failures and embarrassments now. Is I try to learn from them, like you said, and I try to remember that you win some and you lose some. And I've been on the schooling end of people plenty of times. I try not to needlessly embarrass them, but some people would scoff at that idea that I don't do that. So I don't know. It depends who you ask, I guess. I gotta get burned sometimes too. Sometimes I do, and it's not my favorite, but I don't dwell on it anymore. It's just I don't dwell on it as much. I don't dwell on it much. Shit'll come back to me again. I'll cringe at my own bad behavior, and it'll cause me to. It would cause me to say shit to myself, like, you stupid fucking idiot, or whatever. Self-abusive language. I don't know if any of you guys have gone through that particular fun habit, but I went through that habit for a while, and obviously it didn't serve me well, but I did it anyway. Is the word the bird? It's an excellent, excellent question. I'm not sure. I think it's currently in flux. I think the word is currently in a state of quantum superposition. Maybe we'll find out later. Maybe dependent upon whether or not El Sadat's question gets answered. How is TINI loop ISTP? I mean, I think it would likely. I wouldn't expect there to be. I'm not sure what I think about loops, quote unquote. I guess I can see it in a way, like it would be realizing the TI through the things and deciding that that's determinate and not getting additional complexity, such as FE complexity or FI complexity, or obviously they wouldn't get any complexity from any. So I don't know. Well, the thing is, even though FE is universal, it's very much context based. Well, sure. The system's only dynamic. The system's dynamic from the individual's perspective, right? And the thing is, what's universal about it is the fact that there's some cultural modality of communication that's going to be more or less effective or defensible. If that modality of communication is logic, then it's TI. But if it's something else, then TI might not be very effective at defending its arguments, because those arguments might not be allowed for some reason. They might be censored, or you might be in North Korea or something, Okay, well, FE, understand this. FE is not universal in the sense that what's good FE here might be bad FE someplace else. In that sense, you're right. FE is not universal. What's universal, however, are the approximations, the representations of other people's metaphysical playing fields. That is to say, regardless of what counts as something that's good pride and what counts as something that's too much pride, that's going to vary. But both those tribes, quote unquote, are going to use pride as a unit of measurement in some capacity. So too with respect and disrespect and things like that, right? So well, yeah, I guess you could say I was specifically looking to see if people came up with an out-of-the-box answer, such as, like the first person would say -1 no matter what. The second person says +1 no matter what. But they convey whether it's X or Y using some modality, such as if I say it like a question, +1, then I have an X. And if I say it like a statement, I have a Y. So some other communicative mechanism like that would seem to be a TE solution, right? That it gets you to the answer without following the constricted path. And so, yeah, that's about all there's to say about that. I was also looking to see, how much the ordinality aspect of it threw people off. If people with poor TE or polar TE were thrown off by the ordinality, because you got to process it from an ordinal perspective and go, okay, well, after the first guy goes, there's certain pieces of information that are known, like that. But that may be a TI issue. I'm not sure. For good FE, does the person expressing it have to be expressing emotion which is congruent with sentiments? Just one last statement about that test. I just found that thing. I think I put the link for it already. I put the link for it. Oh, I put the link for something else. Let me put the link for where I got that question, okay? And you can look at it yourself. I just saw the question and decided to make the video on the fly. I don't know what exactly it tests for or doesn't test for. I've just sort of thrown it out there to see as a general principle. I try to see how questions play, and determine what they mean accordingly. For good FE, does the person expressing it have to be expressing emotion which is congruent with the sentiments? No, absolutely not. So it's, instead of putting yourself in the other person's shoes, you're putting yourself in the other person's mind, and you're saying, okay, well, what would I be responsive to here if I were someone? You're trying to read the person or something. Well, this person is going to be responsive to this. It might be considered manipulative, but depending on the circumstances, then that might be the appropriate way to approach the situation. If I've got some sort of DMV requirement and I can manipulate in some capacity an easier path by being pleasant with the person or schmoozing them or something, then there's no reason not to do that. I trot a lot when I think. I don't know what that means. You mean I bounce up and down like this? Move around a bunch? If TITE on FE people will tell you that you are being a sociopath. Feeling types want to live in Disneyland. It's the tyranny of emotions, political correctness, for example. I mean, I don't experience that. Do you? I mean, if you live in Europe, you might experience it more than you're going to experience it around here. I mean, nobody says that shit to me without getting my foot up their ass, metaphorically, with my fiery rhetoric. What does demonstrative TE without FI look like? Well, I mean, like me. I'm always telling people how to do shit. But in general rule, in my own life, I don't care about the how to do shit because I'm playing. Kimberly just realized this yesterday. She's like, why don't we just go get a new pipe? And she's like, oh, because doing it this way lets you use all these tools that you have and stuff. And I'm just like, because this is what I'm doing. It's just like, stop with the how to and the is this smart? I'm messing with shit. That's why. Emotions are fine. FI is fine. Unity FE is fine. But yeah, things like political correctness is when FE goes too far. I mean, I don't think political correctness is necessarily an FE thing at all. To some extent it is. Some of it is. But a lot of it is predicated on the FI notion that the suffering of people because of this group identification or something is more important than some diffuse harm that they're proposing. Yeah, I didn't articulate all the question as clearly as I should have. So I typed the question out as a comment where I included a couple of details I left out when I said it in the video. And I also provided the link to the original question if you wanted to look at it. Like I said, I was just reading shit on the internet and thought, oh, that's an interesting question. Because my initial thought on it was, well, that's easy. You just go x minus 1, y plus 1. And then if it's x and x, then you get minus 2. And then the third guy goes, oh, okay, that's 2 x's. If he's got an x, he goes plus 1, minus 1, there you go. But actually, it's more complicated than that. But it's still very solvable in a conventional way too. Don't just have to solve it in a TE rounded workaround way, like I said. I find FE hypocritical when they talk the talk and don't walk the walk. Well, sure. I mean, that's what TI is there to police FE for. So for me, I've got to be defensible, which means particularly I can't be able to be attacked on FE grounds, which means I can't be successfully be accused of being hypocritical, which means I have to always qualify shit and not be hypocritical. It means I favor things like I'm not very judgy, right? Because I don't want to be judged much because it's kind of easy to judge me, I guess. Okay. FE is not about sympathy. Okay. FE is absolutely not about sympathy. FI is about sympathy. FI is about perceptions. And I guess to a certain extent, it depends on what slot it's in, right? But in the most slot neutral sense, it's about perception and other people's perceptions. Whereas FI is about other people's experience and your own, right? So it's like for FE people, they get FI in this vicarious fashion, where this is probably true for FI people though as well. You know, if you're around people who are strongly feeling an emotion, expressing it honestly and openly, then you'll feel the same emotion. Like I remember there was this video of the band practicing, and my drummer, Nick, at the time, we were practicing a song called I Like to Battle. And there's this end part where he drops out and I go, Rappaneck is, Rappaneck was, Rappaneck will be the greatest rapper ever, never just see them. And then the drums kick back in, right? And the camera is mostly on him because I'm kind of in and out of the frame. And you can see him just like totally enjoying the shit out of it. Like the whole last section where he's just like grinning and just so into it. And so obviously not really aware that he's being filmed or anything, you know? And I watched that part multiple times because it gave me such a FE rush, you know? So that's probably something that FI people feel too, but they're more likely to feel it when it had nothing to do with them, right? Like I got off on it because, you know, I put that band together and that's my song and I'm doing the vocals and, you know, and he's loving it, you know. But if he were just experiencing this great joy and it didn't involve me at all, and it wasn't like I always feel this happy grinny feeling when like a team I want to win, or even if I don't really care, you know, but they're an underdog, they come back and win, and they're so ecstatic, and you can see how much it means to them. That always carries over, makes me feel good, sure. But not to the extent that Pieta di Pia. Okay, super fag gone. Gaelic Belgay. I totally would have thought you meant that super fag gone in terms of FE today if you hadn't corrected it. I just thought that's a strange expression. I've seen hypotheticals like that before. Inflection is a clever way of solving that situation. Thank you. FE is about sympathy, and sympathy doesn't solve anything. FE is not about sympathy. FE tool user here. I'm just watching, getting entertained by the FE smack talk. I'm a fan of FE. ISPs I feel sorry for as it relates to that because they care about FE and I don't. That's true. Number one word for me is moron. Why is that number one word? What does that mean? I don't understand what you mean by that. Number one word for you in all of the English language? It's your favorite word? Okay. Oh, you guys are going fast here. I'm behind. Why do INTJ have worse FE than ISTJ? They don't necessarily. Is it me or does the lecture notes mess up on the four possibilities: X, 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 Y, 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 X, Y, 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 X. Well, there's Y, Y, Y too. So I don't know. All she ever did was TI attack everything in demand. I be SE and TE explain myself. Who? I used to be X. That's frustrating. Remember on High School Musical, Troy Bolton said, I care more about how other people think about me than I do myself. Something like that. I was like, this is terrible to show for children. Well, I mean, it's just somebody acknowledging that they're FE. And probably the message of the show was, this is bad. You shouldn't be like that. People need to talk differently about FE, right? It's natural for FE people to understand emotions through other people's response to them in a way. It's like you feel good about yourself when other people like you. It's more complicated than that when it's not in the third slot, I suspect, and it's more complicated than that for me too. I feel good in a number of ways when I'm FE aware, which FE aware means being attentive to how other people are going to perceive me and themselves based on what I say. Now, some of that's FI, like putting yourself in the other person's shoes, but generally it's an awareness of a scheme of narrative angles that are specific to FE, I guess. Some people should be more selfish. Others should be less selfish. Whereas still others are exactly the right amount of selfishness. INXJ. FI has no problem with paradoxes. I love you, but I hate you. It promotes relativism. It has to be balanced with TITE. Otherwise, we recite objective reality. Well, I more or less agree with that. FI certainly tolerates paradoxes. In fact, FI is all about how paradoxes are just black and white thinking, limits of words, and my real experience isn't like that because my feelings are as rich and miracle filled as a million unicorn miracles. I don't think we are more PC in Europe in terms of our language. I've lived in the US and Europe. Language policing much more common in the US. I've never been language policed. I don't know where you're living. You need a solution to get two meanings out of one word. FI is about empathy. Empathy. FE is empathy. FE is sympathy. That's going to be confusing to listeners who aren't reading the chat. I was just reading 4 things by Mad Biscuit, Ayub, and Nanos. Sruddy Chandran. I've heard it said before that TI is really judgmental. Do you think it's true? No. TI is non-judgmental. It is instead determining a status, which is different than judgmental. Judgmental is normally meant as saying you are bad because you do this, or but you couldn't possibly have thought that was a good idea. Wow, Marianne, you've got a lot of growth to do. That's like judgmental, right? TI is not like that at all. TI is fair. It does it pass judgment on things? Sure. It determines whether things withstand muster or not, whether they can be pushed on with other words and still be standing at the end of being pushed upon. But it doesn't judge people. It judges words and statements, claims, justifications, things like that. Empathy, a definitive trait of feeling functions themselves. Yeah, I don't think it's correct to say that FE and FI are either sympathy or empathy. I think that the distinction between the two words, sympathy and empathy, is in and of itself a little bit of a muddy one. I mean, I get the notion that sympathy is, I guess, feeling sorry for somebody's situation, and empathy is understanding how somebody else feels based on their situation. But Yeah, I guess they're different. I guess FE would, in that case, have more of an empathetic edge, and FI more of a sympathetic. But it's a pretty subtle distinction. I'm not sure it's particularly significant. And FE and FI differ much more substantially in what kind of functions they are. FE is an interface function, and FI is a judgment function or a deliberation function. So they're just different kinds of functions, and comparing them like that against one another on the same units is kind of a foolhardy mission, I think. I have nothing against FE. I love FJs. He answered the TI test first. He's INTP. Who did? Shirtless Woodman? Shirtless Woodman is not an INTP. You're forced to make them feel good regardless if they should feel that way based on their experience, which you find out by putting themselves in their shoes, which is empathy, which is F5. Well, what? No, look. That assumes that the reason you are trying to make them feel good is because you put themselves in their shoes. That's not necessarily why you're trying to make them feel good at all. You could be trying to make them feel good because you understand the way that the average human being responds to certain kinds of things, and which is pretty universal. It's like, this is the aspect of FE that's universal. If you're nice and successful in being flattering to the person and showing them a great deal of respect, which is to say, if you're successful, that means they don't think you're faking it, that you've managed the intuition of it part too. There are ways to give compliments where they seem very naturally occurring and almost belie the notion that they could possibly have been constructed, but nevertheless were constructed ahead of time. So is there a manipulative quality to it? Sure. There's a quality of understanding how to move smoothly through the dynamic social universe and how to move awkwardly through it. The same thing is true with TE. My wife, Kimberly, moves very awkwardly through the TE universe. She has some crazy notions sometimes about how to do things that just baffle you. But that's totally fine with me because I countervalue it anyway. Yeah, don't try to make a distinction between FE and FI based on empathy and sympathy. It's a wild goose chase. The reality is FE is an interface function that operates by understanding those aspects of the emotional landscape of the other that are more or less universal, and they can be reduced to symbolic representations easily enough. And most of those are ones that are interactive emotions. That is to say, there's two different kinds of emotional display. I'm mad at you, and I'm feeling sad about something that's not related to anything external, maybe even at all. Maybe I'm feeling sad because I'm thinking about that time my dog died. So, and those two displays, both might be natural, but only one of them is intentionally communicative, or let alone willfully communicative. Maybe it's willfully communicative as well, but the expression of the display of sadness because you're lost in your head thinking about your dead dog and not aware that people are looking at you, that is not intentionally communicative. It's accidentally communicative. Whereas the display of anger towards somebody for what they said or did is intentionally communicative. Whether it's willfully communicative or not is another question. For me, it's more or less probably, well, if I'm genuinely angry, then it's FI. But most of the time, my display of anger is much more FE. I don't really care, whatever it is. It's just my natural sort of dramatic, expressive qualities of going like, and okay. Let's see. My ego is fragile and I don't do FE things because my ego. I do it because I value a positive atmosphere. Okay, well, Congratulations. I don't know what type you are. Ben Shapiro is a TE Dom. Why else would he steamroll over people by cherry picking facts that actually challenge anyone based on the merits of their points? And Ben isn't a TE Dom, or by making ridiculous analogies. Ben is an ENTP. Ben is a clear ENTJ. Okay, well, Ayub Bananas, I got to tell you about this question. He is somebody who is a very strange instance, which is to say, I can't tell whether he's an ENTJ or an ENTP, and I'm split between those two types. He could be a well-trained ENTJ, or he could be an ENTP. He could be an INTP as well, but I suspect he's an ENTJ who's been trained in debate. Not to disrupt the conversation, as I'm minus 20 minutes, but sent you an email with a question. Okay. Ben has knowledge of conditional life. He's probably a debater. I'm almost sure he was, and you can tell he's a former trained debater. Let's see what Peter Dentist's question is. What? We received a complaint there are so many spam videos on your YouTube channel, but you don't have to worry. We'll review your channel by our YouTube team and let you know by email. Okay. Okay. Is this for real? Huh. It looks real. This could totally be fake. It is fake. This is a tricky fucking spam email. Wow. This is spam. That's so tricky. Wow, this is a phishing email. That's interesting. You know, Eric could be an ENTJ trained debate. That makes sense. I forgot to look at it from that perspective. He shows ENTJ body language just like C.S. Joseph. Ben Shapiro is Jewish. That's not his type. Kaylee Belgay, why? He started from a young age, nasally TE voice, FI smile, scrunches upwards as opposed to being a wide-looking FE smile. Ben Shapiro is selectively cherry-picking certain statistics just to back up his fucked up FI beliefs. C.S. Joseph was molested as a child. Well, I mean, yeah, look, I don't know if that's the truth or not, but I do know that Kimberly is stressed that she can tell that C.S. Joseph is somebody who has a quality that she had a friend who went and experienced this as well. Used to be fat and then had some sort of bypass surgery and stuff, and then probably experienced a lot of trauma. And he said it himself, and yeah, I'm sure was something where it makes sense then why he's so conflicted about how a self can be a singular self. His parts are in such turmoil with his core self that he thinks it's necessarily the case that nobody is a unified self. And that's just nonsense, of course, but he doesn't even realize he's doing any damage. I hope he understands it as well. Avoidant attachment. Okay. He does need Becky, Andy. You're right. C.S. Joseph needs Becky. Yeah, I talked to somebody on the phone today who needs Becky too. They're calling me for typing. I really just want to say, you know what? Spend your money on Becky. It'd be more well spent. That would be good FE, but it would really be Mostly FI, I guess. You know. Yeah, it makes me think. Okay. Okay. Am I at the bottom of my ISTJ therapist? For sure. Yeah, I'm running for president. Probably not in 2020, realistically, though. Because flip-flopping at the end is not predicting shit. What was I supposed to be predicting? I don't know. What was I supposed to be predicting? Um. Oh, I was talking about Ben Shapiro. Well, Ben Shapiro, like anybody, would have their hands full if they had to debate me. But thus far, the only person who seems to be a bright person who's offered to debate me is Nicholas Major. Ben Shapiro uses facts to create a logical system that is particularly apt to taking apart someone's FI arguments. To that extent, I don't think he is ENTP. I think rather an INTP. Well, I mean, INTPs typically are mostly adept at avoiding having their own arguments picked apart or avoiding committing to anything that can meaningfully be used to work against them while not sounding avoidant at the same time. If Ben Shapiro leaves a bad taste in your mouth, Freddie Chandran, then you shouldn't let him put it himself in there. If you become president, you're going to require your MBTI system be taught in all schools. President, the school systems are not a concern of the federal government. If anything, disband the federal education department. You have to conform to the shadow government. Sure. How can we debate you, Eric? You just say, I would like to get on camera with you and debate this topic at this time. Are you available? Shoot me an email, and I'll say, yeah, and we'll book the time slot, and we'll have the conversation. We'll record it. You got to be willing to get on video and mic, though. I don't want to debate with somebody who's typing or whatever. I want to actually talk to a human being. What will you be changing if you become president? Well, I'm going to be doing a lot of work through case law. So one of the constraints on the president is, of course, the president does not write laws, nor does the president vote on laws. The president signs laws. And one of the shortcomings of every presidency heretofore just about has been the inadequacy of the frame of reference through which they approach the job. I understand that with the Justice Department and with the president directing the Justice Department to make and or not fight against certain kinds of challenges to law, then certain avenues of case law become enshrined as precedent, and then that can really determine how law in general is interpreted going forward. And that's a much more powerful way to approach the country's problems. We've got to set framework level precedent in the legal system, case law that trickles down, cascades down, and eliminates previous examples of case law that are at a lower level and changes them, flips them. And that's how we can make genuine progress with the government and the country. Yeah, well, on my front page, there's a what's it called? Playlist that is it's called Exciting Tables and Words by Human Personality. I think that might be the playlist it's called, or it's called Explaining Personality or something like that. It's this text you can get to. It's Google Docs link that's available at the bottom of each of those videos where I read through that and explain some things. There's lots of stuff. You gotta kind of you just use the channel search the obvious terms. I've got over 5,000 videos, probably close to 6,000 now. So channel searches are usually will toss things up. If you're like, I want to know more of this objectivity subjectivity distinction he's making, type in objectivity, you'll get a shit ton of videos saying this is what it means. God damn it, because people always want to challenge me on this shit. Okay, the president can sort of make laws. It's called executive orders. Well, that's one of the sort of things I want to curtail. The president ought not be able to make these kind of executive orders. There's lots of executive orders the president makes currently that they should be unconstitutional. So how do you fix that? Well, I sign a presidential order of the sort that I think is unconstitutional, and then direct the Justice Department to challenge it in court. Force the Supreme Court to evaluate the fucking thing and render a constitutionally sound decision on it, and pick my choice very carefully, so that I'm aware of existing case law. So that's how you fucking change the world right there. You don't change actuality, you change the frame, you change the narrative, and everything else follows. Okay. Sure, Nicholas Major, that makes sense. I mean, if you're going to debate me, you must disagree with me in some sense, right? Or you just want to stake the opposite side for the sake of being devil's advocate. Are you negating my system, or are you advocating an alternative? That's the first question we need to know. And then we'd have to sort of have a resolution, that is to say, under what frame are we making this argument? Are you negating the affirmation that I've presented, or are you presenting an aff and it's contradictory or exclusive of my aff, and therefore it's a counterplan and that negates? Or, we need to specify what exactly it is going on. Are any text comfortable with making precise singular predictions? I guess, well, I'll take a stab at it periodically, and occasionally I'll be right. It's almost like I'll get an NI moment, but I'm not sure if it's NI or not, and I'll go, I bet you maybe it happens. I'll make a specific prediction. Usually it doesn't come through. But I would say that's the fish out of water experience for me. That those moments when I make those predictions are the exception, and therefore memorable. Babylonian mystery school system, huh? That sounds fascinating. Look, I don't mean to dismiss conspiracy in general. I understand that conspiracy is a real thing. People do conspire, and it's certainly plausible that there's some sort of power well that matches the general qualities of something you're saying, as long as you don't think that they're actually successfully puppeteering anything, in which case you're crazy. How come TI is associated more with critical thinking than TE? Because critical thinking is all about communicable defensibility, and TE is about effectiveness. TE, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong or get it, it matters if you get what matters done. Like, well, I've never heard of anybody using cement like that, but if it works, it works. That's good TE, presumably. That's not a conspiracy. People believing the moon doesn't exist, I guess they have to believe in a conspiracy, but who believes the moon doesn't exist? You can see it in the night sky. That's not true, Mad Biscuit. That's just nutty NI shit. I think you have the broad brushstrokes, but I've been developing extensions of them, such as model B that incorporates other realms of psychology as well as other fields. Well, I mean, that might be your downfall, because ultimately you need to make distinctions about whether each element you're talking about is actually a process, is it simulatable, or is it simply a value that we can deduce a relationship between the individual self and that function, or is it a display that correlates? So the problem with socionics is it doesn't make that distinction, and that's where it fails in general. If you're not making that distinction, you're going to lose the debate. I'm going to tell you right off the bat. So you need to be able to be making all those distinctions. You need to understand that if the system is going to be functionally a model, as things are normally modeled, then it's got to have an adequate set of definitions that are operationalized, as they can be turned into a consistent unit or something like that within the system to make it mechanical. But you may additionally have layers of things that express rules for those underlying, machine code kind of elements to it. But you got to really know what you're doing if you expect to have a chance in this debate. So just to let you know, you seem like a pleasant fellow. You seem like a smart guy too. So I don't doubt that you've got plenty of your own chops and everything and tricks up your sleeve and so forth. Also, that he probably would have already noticed it before the person came up to him. I have something to report. I asked the neo-Nazi question to an ESP. He said he'd just leave. I asked why. He said he didn't want to be associated with him. Okay, interesting. Also, that he probably would have noticed it before the person came up to him. The Earth is flat, or like MK Ultra. That's been confirmed. Yeah, okay. MK Ultra has been confirmed. But just because the CIA conspired to do mind control shit, that's not surprising. It's the fucking CIA. Their job is to conspire to do shit. Are there other bullshit stuff that they did that we don't know about? Other really ill-advised stuff? Yeah, absolutely. But if you think there's any capacity for adequate collusion for a single group to maintain control across multiple administrations, across even generations, then you don't understand the dynamism of the reality that we live in. That's it. The moon too bright when the Space Force start taking action. I don't know. They believe the moon is a hollow light source. Until I have been into space, I won't say what's what. That wouldn't be any responsible. The moon is a hollow light source. Did I debate destiny? Yeah, nobody wants to debate me. I always say I'll debate you, and everyone's just like, well, let me think about it. Or they just don't say anything, I mean, I'll debate anybody about just about anything that I know about. But nobody wants to debate me. Okay, that's the problem, Mad Biscuit. You're connecting dots that assume a stability to the system and a regularity to the fluid dynamics thereof that isn't present in reality. There's something about fluid dynamics that precludes that kind of stable equilibrium in a system as chaotic as social interaction in a system like the West, where there's, free access to information and, people are able to converse back and forth with each other. The thing is, most people are good people, and most of the people who do bad things even are not ill-intentioned. Some of them are, but nobody's that powerful, and there's not that many agreement between different powerful people. Let's see. Stephen Bonnell. Who's Stephen Bonnell? I'm wanting you because I care about you and I know I want you to do good in this world, but don't become president. Why not? That's where I can do the most good. Look, I'm not a big fan of the intelligence agencies, certainly not the NSA, and I think CIA and even the FBI are going to be. If your job is to prevent unknown threats, then there's no success metric really, and it's absurd. So to identify threats and stuff, come on, there aren't that many threats really. What do you want? Arguing with me is not the same thing as debating me, Tim Bulwer. If you want to debate me, then let's talk about a resolution and let's debate it, and figure out who's F and who's neg. You feel that you need to check yourself whether the moon is hollow like source, and that's any. That may be T, but it's more specifically concrete. It is through the Babylonian mystery school system. I see. It is a powerful school system, so powerful that it can overcome all these fundamental qualities of reality. Would you debate anyone for free? Or do you always make them pay money? I never make anybody pay money. I've never even dreamed of asking anybody to pay money. If I get to make a video out of it, that's all it costs, Biscuit, but there's no reason to conclude what you're saying. You're NIing at the expense of TI, NE. You're forgetting that there are NETI people in the world. People like me who take carefully planned little systems like that and turn them on their end and say, oops, did I destroy your fucking hidden secret shit here with my calling bullshit on it before I even thought about whether or not I should be saying these words and just screaming loudly and making every big fuss about shit? So there are a lot of people like that in the world. The idea that this thing can be so well and tightly controlled, certain aspects of things can be hidden, sure, from the public, and lots of stuff is. And I don't approve of that. And I'm all a big believer in freedom of information. That doesn't mean we can conclude that there is some cabal of ultra-powerful, dominant elites who control the world with their puppeteering. It's just not true. To the extent that the bankers run the world, well, it is true that any responsible world leader has a responsibility to help maintain currency stability and do sensible economic policy to prevent things like runaway inflation or runaway deflation. Is the Fed the right system for the United States? I don't think so. But is the United States part of a global economy that relies upon stability fundamentally in order to continue doing business and living a prosperous life? Yes. And so, yeah, people are, the bankers run the world? No, I mean, the need to not fuck everything up that's good for stupid reasons is the primary reason shit doesn't get fucked up. Now, people like Trump who aren't driven by that basic notion, they will end up fucking shit up, but it's because they're stupid as fuck. It's not because he's some sort of evil genius. What do you mean their goal is total damnation? What does that mean? Total damnation. Whose goal is total damnation, and what makes somebody embrace that as a goal? So, what are you looking for in life? Total damnation of everybody. Why is this? I'm an evil dominant elite. It's what we do. Sacrifice children, control the world. We have a Babylonian mystery school system. Babylonian mystery school system? Yeah. Super powerful. Transcends generations. Maintains a power well of a few families of highly connected people that control the world secretly from behind the scenes. That's us. So you guys all agree? Yeah. Really? So why is it you all agree? Well, because it's the only thing we can all agree on and make sure we always are all in agreement is we want total damnation. But why do you want total damnation? Well, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to agree, and then this whole Kukumani notion would fall apart. You are some sort of smart, confusing, eccentric, and weird random person. Who, me? I'm not eccentric or weird or confusing. or random, or sort of, or some. You are a smart person. No one is an evil person in charge, but there's two people in charge everywhere you look, most from what I can tell, because of old systems that don't fight current times right. Don't attribute to malice, but can more easily and logically be explained by stupidity. That's the thing. They agree because they're Luciferians. So if they're Luciferians, they want total damnation. Last I heard, people who were into Lucifer were into the fact that he unveiled for everybody the notions of good and evil, and that free will and choice are critical elements of being human, and that makes his action, if not in keeping with God, at the very least in keeping with our current understanding of human interest. I don't think that means they seek total damnation. Have you met any Luciferians who claim to seek total damnation? They're following the teaching of Cush, Nimrod, and Samarius that led the apostasy against God. What is that teaching? Is it like sacrifice the children and make everybody evil and bad, and then you get some shit? My Gmail is at the bottom of every one of my videos that I put up lately anyway. And it goes like this. SueArtsSire at gmail.com. Eric, you will meet some Luciferians if you try to become a politician or president specifically. How will I know them? Will they come up to me and say, "Hail Chaos"? Okay. I don't doubt that I know, in fact, that there are awful people in the world who rape children and sexually traffic them and stuff. There's absolutely no reason to believe that a higher percentage of such people exist amongst politicians than exist anywhere else. Do you have any reason to believe that? What do you mean, give up your soul? How would I do that even? They will not let me. What are they going to do? No. We will not let you have an inauguration unless you sign away your soul. I see. And do I get my soul back after I'm done being president? Who am I signing it to? How will the person who has my soul be able to control me because of the fact that they have possession of my soul, or at least the pink slip to it, presumably? Does that mean that they stab my soul with a pen, that I'll feel pain, or that my soul then is in a cage and needs to get out and pee, and if I don't do what they say, they won't let my soul out to pee, and then he'll wet himself, and so I have to do what they say? Is that how it works? Drink blood and kill somebody you love. Well, okay, I'm doing neither of those things, and I'm still going to become president. So that will disprove your theory. What giving up your soul means is you give up the rights of your life. So why would you want to do that? Why would you want to give up the right to your life so that you can be used as a sacrifice? And how do they use you as a sacrifice? What does it accomplish to sacrifice me? Besides having a big mess to clean up. Alex Jones uses meth. Well, I mean, I have a lot of energy to rant for hours. I've been at this for 2 hours now. Well, I don't think I'd call it ranting per se. That's ridiculous. Mad Biscuit, that's just fucking nuts. There's no reason to believe that. Why do you believe that? It doesn't make any sense. It violates what we know about systems, equilibrium, and fluid dynamics and stuff, and chaotic systems. And I mean, you just have to ignore everything that makes any sense to believe that. And how do they know if their gods are satiated? Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of bullshit on the internet about it. but it doesn't make any sense on its face for lots of reasons. No, Mad Biscuit, you truly, your name should be less accurate. I wish your name were less accurate. I wish you were a sane biscuit instead. Man, you're off there. He isn't paid by the government. He's a useful idiot at best and definitely has ties to the Zionist movement. The Zionist movement? Jesus Christ. What? You people and your fucking conspiracies. What Zionist movement? What do you think the Zionist movement's all about? Are the people who self-identify as Jews who support Israel and promote the idea of Jews taking over the West Bank and Gaza Strip and stuff like that? Yeah, of course. Is that the Zionist movement? The Zionists control the world. Huh. I don't feel controlled by any Zionists. That's what I want to know. Am I being controlled by a Zionist right now? Because as far as I can tell, I'm not being controlled by any Zionists. I don't feel controlled by any Zionists. Unless that Jew holding on to my nutsack is, oh, maybe he's a Zionist. If you think I'm trolling, you're a fool. It's all real. All of it. It's amazing we're all still alive. They're trying to kill us every minute, constantly, with their lies and their damnations. They're doing a very good job of it. Why haven't they been successful if they've been able to maintain power and control things all this time? Why is it taking such a long time for them to cause damnation? Well, no, Mad Biscuit, I want to know. Are they incompetent? Are they incompetent Luciferians? All that power across generations, and they still can't fuck everything up? Okay, well, I'm glad you're laughing. I'm so naive. But I'm asking you a real question, though. You know? Like, why are they so bad at causing damnation? I have believed a lot of shit before, and I can be so misleading. It can. I mean, Israel and the United States are in a relationship in which each party impacts the other in various ways. Complicated. No Zionists are controlling me. I don't have, Mr. Silverstein, my resident Jew, sits in my house and tells me where to go and what to do. So I'm not sure how I'm being controlled by the Zionists. Okay. So the Jews have been kicked out of a lot of countries. I mean, makes me think they were more successful than the residents, possibly. Well, the Holocaust is fake now. I see. Jesus Christ. Well, I guess if I go for Livestream in the middle of the night, what time is it anyway? Almost 3 o'clock. I gotta go to the dentist at 10 a.m. So well, look, the one thing we can conclude is that throughout history, various individuals have chosen to hate other individuals because those other individuals are part of a group that the first individual attributes onto the second individual, whether legitimately or not. And it can also be said that for every instance of that, the person who's doing that reduction of individuals to members of the group is engaged in poor thinking and inadequate TI, inadequate NI, and a general path of ontological assault upon people they don't even know. That's how it is. And with that, I'll bid you all a good night, because I gotta go to bed, because I gotta go to the dentist in the morning. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Amber Thrasher, if you're still here, for coming in with thunder. You're a wonderful human being. And don't forget, keep plenty of pistachios. I'm eating pistachios.